So love for anyone to reach out if they want to contact me. I am on LinkedIn. I run a blog where I have examples for all of this stuff. So if you want a deeper dive, feel free to go check that out later. I have a YouTube channel, but I'm not doing YouTube videos on this topic yet because I don't have the time, but maybe this is a good excuse to get back into my YouTube channel. So I'm a product manager at Oracle. Oracle's known for its database product, but we also have a cloud, and we own Java, and we're responsible for VirtualBox and what else? MySQL. I have a huge applications business. The AI implications of what it can bring for customers, to partners, to platforms covers all of that. But what I'm going to talk to you about today is the database, the Oracle database. I think I need to say show my screen anyway. Okay. All right, so I'm not going to assume that you know anything about Oracle database. I just have a few slides just to kind of catch you up. In a fun quirk of fate, I'm the exact age of the Oracle database. We were both born in 1977. We're the same age as Star Wars, so I kind of got the geek trifecta there. Many of you are probably customers, not directly, but indirectly of the Oracle database. So if you have done any of these things that are on the screen right now, there's a good chance that behind the scenes there was an Oracle database that was making that possible. So in the higher ed space, a lot of the universities and colleges around the world are running software that are allowing you to, register for courses or get housing or student loans. There's an Oracle database behind the covers, that's handling the secure transmission of your personal identifiable information and is making sure that when you pull up your schedule, it's always the right version of your schedule and not what the schedule looked like 2 minutes ago. We're very popular in point of sales. So I think I can say this: if you go buy a coffee in Starbucks, at least in North America, that point of sale system is running an Oracle software stack with the database under the covers. Investing, personal investing or retirement planning, 401k is a U.S. thing. But if you're buying stocks, if you're working with banks or financial institutions, the Oracle stack, especially the Oracle database, is behind that for a couple of reasons. It's very fast. It's designed to work with huge amounts of data. It works in a distributed environment. It's very easy to spin up additional resources like add, CPU, add memory dynamically as loads increase. The security is top notch. We give you all the development interfaces that you need. We support all kinds of different types of data in your database. So, NoSQL kind of entered the universe about 10 years ago, which was sort of it was a popular uprising against like everything has to be relational. JSON documents are very, very user-friendly or developer-friendly as well. So it's really easy to add, things to your model or your schema by just throwing new attributes or objects to your JSON model. But the Oracle database can run in that mode. We handle spatial data, graph data. We handle vectors. So we're a vector database. Obviously, we support the relational, rows and columns model, but we also support objects in the database, object relational. Pretty much if you can think of a way to store and work with data, the Oracle database supports it. And what we put on top of all of that is like a single SQL interface. So SQL isn't going anywhere. It's one of the top rated skills and most popular skills for anyone in the tech space. If you can type SQL, or if you can talk to an LLM that can generate SQL based on what you're talking to it, you can get data in and out of your database, and it covers all of these different types of use cases. And I just have to do a little bit of brag, I guess, but a lot of the world's biggest, most successful companies are using our tech stack. But if you're just getting started in your career, if you're between careers, or if you want to pick up the database stuff, we have a completely free platform offering, and there's a couple of different ways you can get started. One, we have a website called there's a typo. There's too many S's in that. It's livesql.oracle.com. Maybe Tara can put that extra link in the chat. This is a hosted environment. You don't even have to sign in. You can immediately start playing with our test data. Teach yourself SQL. There are tutorials built in. If you want to sign in, it takes like 3 seconds to sign up. You don't need a credit card or anything. We allow you to create your own tables, put your own data in there, start playing with SQL, teach yourself, the basics of database stuff, so you can use that. We also have a container that you can use for free. So if you're using Docker or Rancher or Podman or any of the popular container platforms, you can just download that and be up and running and have an Oracle database on your Mac, your Windows box. And they can be Intel based, or they can be the fancy M1, 2, 3s, and 4s from with the ARM chips. We have both of those platforms supported. If you're not a fan of Docker and you like having like a real, big boy virtual machine, we have a VirtualBox appliance that you can download and has Oracle Linux on it. It's got our database on there with all the sample data loaded up, and it even has things like our low-code application platform in there called Apex. I think you've probably seen that in 1 or 2 previous sessions. And it has our mid-tier web infrastructure in there too, so you can develop and have a play with REST APIs if you want. All right, so let's get off like the little sales track for Oracle and get into the topic at hand. And really the star of the show today is going to be the multi-context protocol, or MCP. And that allows your agents and their LLMs to interact and to act and to do things based on things they have access to versus things that they've been trained on or have been given as resources. So before I get into that, just like examples of how agents can be helpful today, as human beings, as workers, as parents, as volunteers, whatever, we're all pressed with time. We have more asked of us than we have the time to do, or maybe we have like nagging tasks that we know we need to do, but they're not fun. And this is where these agents really come into play. They're not just for like telling us what the weather's going to be, or, whose autograph this is, and by uploading pictures. They can do actual work tasks for us. They can generate applications for us. When it comes to data, there's all kinds of things they can do based on the data that's stored in a database. So some of the most important information in the world is in a database. And the agents, the LLMs, have not been trained on the contents of the database. They've been trained on the contents of Wikipedia, on white papers, on blogs, on published documents. But if you're a worker at a financial institution and you have a database that has information in there that would be useful for your tasks, you can now, take advantage of everything the LLMs are good at, and they can interact directly with what's in your database. So obviously we want to make sure this is a secure relationship as well, and not just easy, right? So we need to be secure and easy, and we've built this here at Oracle to make that possible using this MCP platform stack. So this is a brand new protocol, and it's a very light protocol. It's very loosely defined, and it's one of the reasons I think it's really taken off. So Anthropic is a company. They introduced this in, I think, November of 2024, which is like lifetimes ago as far as AI is concerned. But it was the spring of 2025 where the different vendors and open source projects and individual contributors really started to take off with implementing this protocol. And what this allows you to do is basically have sort of like a universal plug-in adapter to say, hey, I'm going to allow you to interact with X from your agent. So I can be in Copilot, I can be in Claude, I can be in any of these agents and say, hey, I want for you to spin up my Mongo container, or I want you to go clone my project from GitHub, or I want you to scan my operating system looking for this file that I've lost. These MCP servers allow me to do that. So they create a direct link from the agent and their LLMs to these other things. And so what we've put out is a very secure, fast, free connector, so an MCP server for the Oracle database as well. And that's what I'm going to show you what it can do in terms of interacting with the LLMs. So this means that any Oracle database that you have access to, so if you're in a corporate environment, if you're on your machine and you're connecting to the database with your regular tools, you can configure the MCP server to make those same types of connections on behalf of these clients, of these agents. If you're brand new to all of this and you wanted to start playing with it, you could go get one of those free databases that I was showing earlier. You could put some data in it, and you could ask the agent to go answer questions based on that data, or to go take and do things based on the contents of that data. Or heck, you can ask the agent to generate new tables and put test data in there for you if you want to use the agent to teach yourself databases. I became aware of just like how ubiquitous ChatGPT was when it went down for like a day this spring. My daughter freaked out. She's like, I can't do my studying, my homework. I'm like, why not? She's like, I have an AP history test. And the way I study for that is I ask ChatGPT to quiz me based on the AP history test. I'm like, oh, I didn't know you could do that. That's cool. You could use this tech stack to have ChatGPT or one of any of the other LLMs. We don't really care which one you use. You can use whichever ones you're a fan of, like Anthropic has some, there's Grok from X. You can ask the agent to teach you how a database works. And it could do that by going into the database and like literally creating tables for you and teaching you SQL by live interacting with the database itself versus like reading it statically in a markdown page. So you can have, most of the agents will support up to 100 of these servers. So like in your VS Code project, for example, you could have Copilot set up to talk to 50 of these things. So you could seamlessly give it tasks like, hey, we're going to start a new project. I'm going to need a new directory on my file server. I'm going to need a new project in GitHub. I'm going to need a new schema in my database. I'm going to need to fire up this container because that's where my database is. And it could proactively interact with those entities via this MCP server protocol. So the protocol basically makes available 3 different things. So from whether it's Oracle database or whether it's GitHub or whether it's your file system, the main thing are these tools. And think of the tools as like the APIs or the actions or the things you can literally do with the resource. And so the tools would allow you to do things like create things, connect to things, query things. Resources are like literally like a file you could attach. Like, hey, for this session, I need you to know about this markdown document, or I need you to know about this spreadsheet. And prompts are literally AI prompts. In the MCP universe, like 90% of all the effort right now is being undertaken to provide tools. So tools are like literally what are advertised to the agents. Like when you ask an agent to do something and it's like, well, I haven't been trained on any of that, but I can see I have a tool here available to go do the thing that you're asking me to do. I can go play with that tool and see if it's going to help us, achieve our plan. That's the primary benefit. Just some database kind of minded examples. So if I'm a business user, like if I'm in accounting, I have my regular reports, but I have a CFO or I have some boss that just needs something last second because her boss and their boss asked these things and it landed on your shoulders. Hey, I need to know exactly how many widgets are on order in this region and what's our pipeline look like. And I don't have a report for that. Now I could go teach myself SQL or teach myself the data model to go into the database and run the query and figure that out. But what this technology allows me to do is ask my agent to do that for me. So in this case on the screen, I have Visual Studio Code with Copilot, and the LLM is set to ChatGPT 4. And I've asked it, hey, go connect to my database and tell me how many widgets or X's or Y's or whatever that we've done. It doesn't know anything about databases apart from like theoretically what databases are. But I've said, hey, go connect to my HR database. It knows it has a tool called List Connections where it can get an inventory of the databases it has available to work with. And if it sees one in there that matches up to that HR pattern, it's going to ask me, hey, can I go do this thing? And I'm going to say, yes, please. Then it's going to try to connect to it. And then it's going to start generating queries to try to figure out, to sort the answer to the problem. So, I've given in a couple of keywords. I said, in my HR database, find out how many of my employees are managers. So if I were to expand this dialogue, and I'll show you this in some live demo later, I can see where it's literally looking at the collection of tables, and it's looking for things called employees. It finds a table called employees. It starts querying that table and looking at that table to see what's in it. And it can interrogate it by generating its own SQL to do this with no interactions from me. It can figure out who's a manager in that table. It can find out the relational structure, find out the reporting scheme, and it comes back and it summarizes the data for me. It doesn't give me a spreadsheet. It doesn't give me like a column review. It gives me like a human readable report of what it found. And this is a really boring example. I could have said, hey, give me a React application that gives me a real-time running list of like what's happening in this system. And it could do that. It could not only connect to the database and get the answer, it could build REST APIs. It could create the node project, install all the libraries for me, get the Oracle node driver, hook the queries up to the backend APIs and generate a rich UI for me. All just me telling it, hey, I need this report. And oh, by the way, it's time to evolve this into an application. Of course, on the app dev side, you can use this tech to help find problematic code. If the data is no good, your application has no chance to be good either. So if you have bad data in the database, you're kind of in trouble. And so to fix that, seasoned people with lots of time on their hands know how to go dive into the database and look for those problems and fix it. But the LLMs are really good at finding patterns and anti-patterns. So, as a database developer, I could say, hey, what indexes am I missing? And indexes are basically tricks to allow the database engine to get to the data faster. Or I could say, hey, where do I have duplicate rows in this table? Because sometimes people are lazy and they don't put business rules on the data. And all of a sudden I have two Jeff Smiths with the same, ID in the database, and it's breaking our app. The LLMs can help find that kind of stuff. Or they can help me build net new things in the database. They can help me create a new column in a table, or create a new table, or create a new index. They're good at that kind of stuff. Or on the ops side, I can ask questions like, hey, why is my system slow? Help me make it faster. And it can go in and look at the database, see what its current state is, look for things that are slow, make suggestions for improvement, and offer to implement those suggestions. So that's the agentic part. It's not just asking a question, get an answer back. It's interacting with the things that it's learning as it goes, and it's making a plan and it's enacting that plan. And you, in this co-pilot universe, you're the pilot. You should be in charge, actively steering the plane, directing the co-pilot what to do on your behalf. And you have the power to say, accept, deny, or deny, but do this instead, or accept, but with this little tweak. So the more you put into these systems, the more you're going to get out. The better you understand your business, the better you understand your data, the more valuable these things are going to be. We can go into pure vibe mode and just type the question and be happy with whatever comes back. But we're going to be limited on like the richness of the system and how good the LLM is at interrogating that system to figuring out what it is. So the better you can come in and kind of put your sort of specific knowledge or experience level on top of what the LLMs and agents are doing for us, the much better outcomes you're going to have. So here's another example. I've literally told it, hey, connect to my reporting database, look at my music data, familiarize with the structure of the data and the data itself, help me build a local React app that gives me a reporting dashboard for my streaming history. So I think I took my Spotify data and downloaded it, put it in the database, and then I said, hey, go look at that stuff. It looked at it, and as it's looking at it, it's also setting up my local React environment. I do not do TypeScript. I do not do JavaScript. I have a computer science degree, but I'm more of a talker than a coder, hence the product management career that I kind of accidentally fell into. but I can read it and I can kind of hack it up, and I can use tools and Stack Overflow and agents to kind of make it do what I want it to do. But this thing set up my entire project in like 15 minutes, I think. And it gave me my app just like I asked for it to. Now I could have spent 10 more minutes and had it update the CSS to make it look nicer and put it in dark mode and all of that. But this is running on my local machine with a stateful, connection on the back end to the database. So if I were to go, change that data, it would instantly apply in real time on the screen. So these aren't hard-coded values. Please don't judge me based on my music preferences. I'm all into hair metal and 70s rock bands. I appreciate what my kids are listening to, but that's not just for me. So as a data nerd, I went from like being able to like see this data in spreadsheets to like being able to visualize it in a React app. If I had like taken teach yourself, the JavaScript 100 days or JavaScript in 100 days, like type thing, it would have been like day 27 for me for it to have clicked to get to be able to build something like this. But the LLMs, man, they sorted this for me in like 14 minutes. Okay, so these MCP servers, they're distributed in a couple of different popular formats. A lot of them are given to you as containers. Like they'll literally give you a Docker container and you'll just spin it up and it'll be running, and it'll still be sitting there waiting for the agent to do what it needs. A lot of them are Python based. So you'll get like a link to a GitHub project and you'll download the Python and you'll, py whatever, and it'll start up and do what it does. On the Oracle side, our customers need a little bit more than that. So whether you're paying or on the free side, what we give you is a binary where you don't have to do any builds, no compiles, very little config. You just basically run the program, and then you're able to use it. So this works with any version of our database, wherever it's running, we don't care. It's a command line interface at heart, but it can run in this MCP server mode. And to do anything with the database, you need a database connection. And so in this command line interface, I can define the connection to my database. It's got a username, it's got a password, it's got the name of the database, where on the network it is. And then once all that's saved, that's when I can start talking to the agent in terms of like, hey, go work with my dinosaur database. And the LLMs are smart. They're not just looking for things called dinosaur. They're looking for patterns that match closely to dinosaur. And an emoji of a dinosaur is going to match. Even the word raptor is going to come close to matching. So if I say, hey, go play with my fun dinosaur database, it goes, oh, I can see you have this raptor database. We'll go work with that. All right. Agents, LLMs, the MCP servers, and the database. I just want to kind of break this down. So I'm not in ask mode. I'm in agent do mode. So like there's lots of these agents. I forget which one this is. This one looks like Copilot again. But you can use any agent that you want as long as it supports MCP. And if there's an agent out there that doesn't support MCP, it's dead. Because without MCP, the agents are basically like castrating themselves. Like they're pretty much all supporting MCP right now. So I just literally ask it a really dumb question. Hey, what databases do I have available to work with? And then what it sees is this tool register that promises the ability to list available databases via connections. And this is generally what you want to see in these agents is you want to be in an interactive permission granting mode. You don't want to go full vibe and just say, go do whatever you want to do. Because it could go into your database and do things you don't want it to do. So it just kind of depends on the environment that you're in. If you're in a development play environment where you're God and you can do whatever you want and you want to give it full vibe mode, where it has continue here, a lot of these clients will be a drop down that says, hey, trust for session, and it'll just go as fast as it can go. If you just continually ad hoc click continue or cancel, anytime it wants to do something via this MCP framework, it's going to ask for permission first. And that's a good way to start because you can actually learn how it's building the plan. Like you can literally see like how its brain is working, and you can see the types of requests it's working. So it's asking for permission to access this list connections tool. And it comes back with the list and it says, hey, do you want to work with any of these? And I say, yeah, let's talk to the Raptor one. And by the way, while you're in there, how many people are connected in the database right now, and then group those by who they are in the program that's running. And it's like, all right, well, to do that, I need to actually connect. Is that okay? And it's showing me the connection name it's using so I can confirm it's talking to the right system. And then once it's in, here's what the LLM has been trained on. The LLM has been trained on databases in general, specifically Oracle databases. So it understands our dictionary, which is just like the fancy word of saying like our phone book. The phone book is where you go to find people. Well, we don't use phone books anymore. It's like the Google, it's like the index, the search engine index for the database. So like when I want to know something about sessions, there's literally a table or a view in the database that lists all of the session info. The LLM has been trained on that via our docs, our blogs. Like I said, we've been around since 1977. There's tons of information out there. So LLMs know about that. LLMs know how to generate the SQL. But now instead of just generating the SQL and saying, well, here's the code for you to go run and figure out yourself, it can actually do the whole thing for us now. So not just generating the code, but then running the code in the database, getting the results back, interpreting those results, and bringing them back to the screen for me. So that's an example of a workflow process that this would take. And I could have said at any point, it's like, hey, the way that you're trying to do this totally sucks. I'm going to deny this. And then via the prompt interface, I could say, hey, here's a better way to do it. So that's where I could bring in my actual expertise or experience level and say, hey, I see what you're doing. You're really close. I think we'll get better results if you just do this one little tweak. And one of the things I love about the agents is they always say, no matter what you give them, they're like, oh, you're absolutely right. We should have been doing that the whole time. And then they just go blindly follow what you told them to do. So this is the ecosystem I was using for that workflow. So this is Visual Studio Code. We have an extension in there to work with Oracle databases that's called SQL Developer. That comes with our MCP tool, and it's automatically configured to work with Copilot. So when you're in VS Code, you go to View Chat. That brings open the Copilot interface. We can see our MCP server is registered. You can see the tools that are available. And then if I start asking questions that kind of hit this knowledge space, you'll see it start to ask for permissions to our tools. There are dozens of AI assistant extensions out there for the VS Code universe. You can use any one that you want. If you choose to use Klein or Rue, for example, you can install that in VS Code, and then you just have to spend a couple of seconds configuring your MCP server list to basically point to where our MCP server is running. All right, I have to talk about security because if I don't, I'll get in trouble. These agents can do really awesome things in the database. And by awesome, I mean the true sense of the word awesome, which can include things like scary. So I could be having a completely made up conversation with the agent, have it doing something with me, and at the end go, you know what, I don't like anything that just happened, let's start over. And it could interpret, although I haven't seen it do this, it could interpret my request to, hey, let's start over, to mean let's drop the database, or let's drop the tables, or let's change things in the database to get back to zero. We generally don't like that when that happens on data that's being used to run universities, governments, hospitals, airports, coffee shops. So what we say is when you set this system up, the security layer in the database makes it really easy to do this correctly. So we can create users that only have the privileges they need to answer the questions you're going to give it. That's true in any system, right? Like the role or the identity that you've been given in your ecosystem, you can only see the things you're supposed to see. So we just ask that you follow kind of like this basic, common sense. Although if you go read in the news, there are lots of stories in there where people have opened up their production systems to these LLMs and really bad things have happened. So you need to be in control of this interaction at all times, and you need to keep an eye on what it's doing. And you need to remain that pilot, not just the co-pilot, where you're hitting approve and deny, and you're watching what happens and you're interjecting as needed. If you're a database nerd like I am, just know that if we're doing things in the database, via an agent, the database system itself, there's a place in there where you can actually see who's connected and who's doing what. So I can literally see in my database that our MCP server has a connection in there, and it's acting on behalf of ChatGPT-4 from someone. And there's another place I can go in to see all of the queries that are being ran. So if I'm using this to help me vibe code my new music streaming app, I could see all of the things that the LLM was doing in the database in this logging table. That's a way for me to learn, so I can learn how to do this stuff myself, but it's also a nice accounting measure so we can keep an audit of who did what in the system. All right, so I think that's enough slides. Do you folks want to see some real stuff, and then also give me a chance to check on the Q&A in the chat for questions? Tara, thank you for clapping, even though you're technically on my team.
There are a couple questions. The first one was, can you put runtime constraints with natural language? I'm thinking about very large sets of data.
Yeah, so are people asking these in the Q&A, or are we doing all this in the chat?
In the chat.
All right, let me pull up in the chat.
So you might have to scroll up a tiny bit, but
in general, the answer to that question is yes. Can you put in runtime constraints with natural language? Oh. Yes, absolutely. So there's a couple different ways to interpret that question, Paul. I could say, give me the top 10. I could say summarize, and that's going to naturally have it not look at every single row, but it's going to use like the group by aggregate functions. Yes, the LLMs, there's debate on what the LLMs are good at. The LLMs are great at generating structured query language, or SQL. So yeah, if you ask the question correctly, it'll do that. And actually what I've seen is the LLMs are naturally biased to just work with smaller amounts of data. The LLMs don't like crunching a million rows in memory. That requires a lot of chunks. That's a lot of network IO. That's a lot of spend. So what it always tries to aggregate or just sample data. It'll try to do 10 rows at a time. On the back end, though, we have on the database side the ability for you to do consumer resource constraints. So I can literally say, Paul never gets to spend more than 5% of the available CPU on the system. Even if Paul's using an LLM that's CPU mad, it'll never let you go above that 5% constraint. So there's a way to do it right from the client side, and there's a way to keep it safe on the server side too. All right, so I'm going to share my screen again. I've got 3 or 4 of these sessions that I've done, and I'm just going to pick one, and hopefully there's something cool in there to share. I'm just waiting for it to refresh. There we go. This is called Windsurf. I love Windsurf for one reason, and I hate Windsurf for one reason. And I'm going to show you both of those reasons. But I think it's really great at a couple of different things. What I love about Windsurf is it's very in your face about the plan. Like, here's the prompt I gave it. It's a pretty big prompt. By the way, prompt engineering is a real thing. And the better prompts you give, the more specific in some cases you are, the better results you're going to have out of the box. So I've said, hey, I'm starting a new project. I want to build a content management system. Think WordPress, for example, or a website management system. I need help with you, build for me the tables in the database. So I said, I want you to create these tables for me. Categories, posts, authors, media tags, and comments. And I gave little descriptions for each. So I said, hey, I want you to build this system for me. And at the very end, I was like, by the way, implement this schema for me using my Wendy database connection. So I created a connection called Wendy, like wind, not the lady. So it could find that database and start to go play with it. But what it does is it starts crunching through this. It's like, oh, okay, here's based on what Jeff's asking, here's kind of what I need to do. So this is like the LLM that's powering the agent itself. And as it starts crunching together this plan, it puts it in a nice markdown document over here. So it's like, okay, I need to do this, I need to do this, I need to do this, I need to do this. And I can approve these things. So I can like basically say, yeah, this looks good. Or I can reject and it'll come back and say, well, what do I need to do? But then it starts executing on the plan. So this is where it gets fun. And it'll go really fast in some cases. In some cases, it'll get stuck and it'll spin its wheels a little bit. So it's like, okay, I want to implement your schema directly in the database. So I'm going to connect to the database. So I can see where it tried to do this. It's literally asking to make a connection on Wendy, and it fails. It's like, you don't have a connection called Wendy. So what I really love about the agents, they fail forward. They don't just fail once and stop everything. They're like, okay, let's try to figure this out and fix it. Like I've had it do that for me to debug and fix my JavaScript before, which I was totally in need of, because if I was in charge of debugging the JavaScript, it would have taken me 10x as long. So it's like, well, hey, you know, this connection doesn't exist, but I'm going to run the tool that just gives me all of the connections. And it turns out the connection was named Wendy in lowercase. So it's like, duh, okay, I'm going to use it. And then it just keeps running. So it's like, okay, I'm going to create the actual schema. So it's got like one huge run-on sentence here that basically creates all of the objects, but I also had it show me what it did. So here's like the literal code that it generated for me. This code's not super complicated, but it can be tedious. It did some really good things in here. So for example, it used the right data types. Like when you're working with temporal data, like dates, times, time zones, seconds, fractions of a second, it's very important to use the right storage format for that data. If you're a trading house and you're storing a transaction for a trade with only seconds and not fractions of a second, that could cost billions of dollars of losses for the financial system, because the stock prices aren't changing on the second, they're changing on the 1,000th or 10,000th of a second. So it becomes very important that we're using the right data types. This is a relational system, and so it can be tedious to like define these relations, what we call foreign key constraints. It beautifully set these all up for me. I didn't give it the type of data that I wanted to store in these tables. I told it the type of data I wanted. I was like, I need an author table. It on its own decided that an author should have a primary key. They need their name, their email, their bio, a profile image. It on its own decided that like comments on a blog would need this information. It figured out on its own that posts, the actual content on the system, like the content could be an unlimited size. It correctly said, hey, we're going to store that in a large object, a character-based large object. So it did some really nice data modeling decisions here for me. I have a lot of experience in data modeling, and so this saved me a lot of time, but I would probably come in here and make a few tweaks. But the difference in making a few tweaks versus doing this all up from scratch, even with the GUI, you know, that's just worth all of that time for it to help me with that. So it implemented the plan as like, hey, we've created the tables and structures for you. I asked as like, hey, we're going to be nice. We're going to comment this code and comment the objects in the database. We're going to use a specific syntax. It's like, hey, we did all of that. Do you want us to check our work? Actually, it didn't ask. It checked the work itself. It's like, hey, I think I did what I was supposed to do. But then it was like, hey, I should probably go make sure the system looks like it should look. So it actually queried the database to see if those tables were in there. And then it did something really nice for me. It was like, hey, what do you want to do next? Do you want some sample data? I was like, yeah, I want some sample data. So I've got like these 6 or 7 tables in here. They're all linked together. And I was like, yeah, create a record in there. And this is where I was going to tease Kris, who's supposed to be my co-speaker today. You know, create a sample post in there on how easy it is to build an application written by this person with these tags. And it went and it thought, okay, here's how I'm going to do that. And then here is the code that it ran to go do that. So it's actually generating inserts and it's generating sample data. And it's not like ipsum lorem, Greek, Latin nonsense. It's like using the LLM to like generate good test data, which makes testing a lot more fun and easier when the data is what it's supposed to be versus junk data. And then it kind of basically finished. I could have gone on with it. At the very end, I was like, hey, I kind of need this code so I can put it in my source control and review it, and it generated the file for me. I've had other agents that are more that were basically doing the coding work in your face. Copilot likes to do that. I think Claude does that as well. Windsurf is more about the plan and the markdown of the plan, and I had to ask for the code as an afterthought. I probably could have used the agent slightly different to get the experience that I wanted. So I really love the planning feature. This had ChatGPT-5 enabled for free. This is the only non-free part of the stack I've been talking to you about. There's a free version of the database. Our MCP client's free. A lot of these tools are free, but you need to license the LLMs, whether you're paying Microsoft via GitHub, whether you're paying X or Twitter, whether you're paying for subscriptions with Anthropic. That's between you and your LLM provider. If you're an Oracle Cloud customer, we have a generational or a GenAI cloud service with hosted LLMs as well, so you can pay us for that if you want. But this is the only non-free part. All right, so let me tell you the thing I didn't like about Windsurf. It, by default, ran as fast as it could without asking me for any interactions. I did not have an opportunity to review this code before it ran it. So I think this is great for like a dev box, sandbox environment where it can destroy the system, or I can destroy the system and no big deal, but I would never let this in production as is. Because I cannot figure out, and this might, I'm not critiquing Windsurf, this is my experience with it over 2 days. I could not find a way to force it to ask me for permission to access these tools. So that's Windsurf. Let me show you one more. Let's see, which one do I want to share? About cursor. Now I have the problem where your monitor's too big, and so you don't close things, and then finding the apps that you want to play with becomes the challenge. Where is cursor? Did I close it? No, it's right there. Here, we'll just share this. No, that was it the whole time. Something went wrong. Okay, let me try again one more time. Share. Okay. Cursor's fun. I actually have 2 different agents running in Cursor right now. I have Klein over here, and over here I have the built-in Cursor agent. You can actually use multiple agents at the same time if you want, if your brain can support that. Mine can't. Let me show you the MCP configuration feature. So these are all done via JSON files, and they're really basic, simple JSON files. So I basically just have to give the path to where I installed our tool, and then I'm good to go. And as soon as I do that, it pretty much recognizes the tool. the MCP server and the tools that it offers. This is actually kind of interesting right here. So you can kind of imagine the information that we're supplying with these tools as like mini prompts. So we're teaching the LLMs how to use the tools by giving really good descriptions in the tools. And the most important one's probably this run SQL one. So I'm like, hey, this tool lets you run SQL queries in the database. If you don't have an active database connection, you need to get one. You're going to get the data back in comma-separated values format. You need to supply this information when you run the query. Your request timeout is a minute. So if you're running really long queries, you might need to have it generate a better query or give it a longer timeout. A lot of people like the Anthropic tools like Klein, because you can literally see how much these tasks are costing you. Like I loaded up $25 on my account. And this task that I gave it to, hey, go log into my system and make sure everything is running as expected, I spent 32 cents on. I think that's a waste of money. I can do that myself for free. But there are other, tasks that I gave it that are much more interesting. Like this one. I told it, I'm a road traffic engineer for my local town. I have all of my crash data in the town. Go look at all of my crash data using the geo coordinates, like the geospatial coordinates. Find for me the worst intersections in my town, and then generate me a interactive Google map showing me the intersections with the traffic accident data overlaid on top. It did all of that for about $1.50, and that took me about 18 minutes going back and forth, tweaking the prompts and improving all of the queries and stuff that it ran. Even me knowing how to do all of that stuff from hand, because I'm old and I have lots of experience, or I know how to Google and find this stuff on Stack Overflow, this would have taken me 2 or 3 days to do it. And it just did this in like 24 minutes. And since I live here, this is personal data to me. This is real data, by the way. I used an open data portal to grab this data. I could confirm that this stuff looks right. So this is the Klein extension. Let's hide that so we can get it out of the way. Over here on the left-hand side is the built-in agent that Cursor gives you. And here's that Spotify example that I did. Somewhere in here. The other nice thing about these agents, they're really good at like keeping track of everything you've done, and you can come back and kind of replay or kind of like see what it did and how it did it. So it's like you can see that it doesn't tell you what the plan is, but you can just see the plan evolve. That's kind of why I like the Windsurf. You can actually see the plan written out, and it tells you its reasoning process. And this one, it just kind of like echoes out as it runs. So say, hey, go connect to my demo database and get comfortable with my Spotify data, and it goes in and looks in and finds it. So it's looking for anything in the dictionary called Spotify, and it finds it. And it's like, okay, I need to know something about this data. So do you mind if I like run this query against it? So I'm looking at the query and I'm saying, yes, this is fine. And here's the naked result that comes back from the MCP server, right? So I, as a human, aren't really seeing this. It's kind of like hidden unless I poke into it. This is what the LLM sees. So the LLM sees this and turns this into this. So imagine you've got billions of rows, so much data. You need help like turning that into some like human readable, consumable content. The LLMs are amazing at that, and the LLMs are amazing at generating the SQL to get the data that they need to present this information. And then if I want to see it in more than a report format, if I want to turn this into a React app, even though I don't know TypeScript and I've only played with Node like a few times, it can go set that up for me too in a couple minutes. I'm going to stop sharing, I think, for reals now. and give you folks all the time that you want for Q&A. And if no one has any questions, I want to say thanks to the good folks here for hosting us, for hosting me specifically. And feel free to reach out and say hi sometime. The main thing here is if you're using agents and you're not taking advantage of MCP servers, you're leaving half the ball game untouched. Like MCP will turbocharge your experience with agents. Someone raised their hand. I'm cool if you want to unmute and talk. I don't know if I have to do that though. Yeah, a lot of companies are utilizing MCP servers. My life, you can ask Tara this. Tara and I's life our schedules are jam-packed with just companies wanting to learn more about this tech. We have customers that have not one Oracle database, but have 75,000 Oracle databases. It's information overload. Like the great thing about a database is all of the information's in there. The bad thing about a database is all of the information's in there. So as humans, it's like, yeah, we can study data models, we can generate reports, we can like have friends, we can like keep our little quick cheat sheet guide of queries that like the whole world's changed overnight. Now, like in a trusted system where someone that kind of knows what they're doing, they can utilize the LLMs to get a leg up and like get the answers out quicker. Like when I ask Tara for stats on something, she knows I get angry if it takes her more than 7 minutes, even though I don't, Tara. It's like 8 minutes you have. But she can bring me the answer back in like 20 seconds now because of this kind of tech, you know, and it's the same way with me and my boss and his boss. Actually, my boss's boss is Larry Ellison, the second richest man in the world. So when he asks questions, they're not questions, they're more like demands. So, you know, this tech allows us to do that kind of stuff. Abhishek, ask your question about Apex, go for it. Lindsay, my examples that I've shown, they're all on my blog, thatjeffsmith.com. All of them are on my blog, where I share the prompts, I share the setup, and I share all of the results, and I talk to you about how like it did what it did. Abhishek, if you've got your Apex question, just put it into the system.
By the way, for all of those, if you have questions, feel free to send in the chat. And I also set the permissions. You can, if you prefer to speak, ask questions, you can unmute yourself, or you can raise a hand. I can unmute you.
We got some questions.
Have open discussions. So go ahead.
All right. So, Umang, I'm sorry if I just said your name wrong. How would I compare MCP with CLI? Well, it's a funny question because they normally don't compare at all, but we actually used our command line interface and represented it as an MCP server. So the Java code behind the scenes, most of our tools are Java. Not that you care, as long as it's fast and does what it needs to do, that's the right programming language. But for us, it's all Java code base. We were able to take a Java code base that's approximately, in some places, 20 years old, and some other places about 9 years old, and in 2 months, refactor it and represent it as an MCP server, not starting from scratch, not giving a brand new tech to our customers, giving them something they're already comfortable with. So in the command line interface side, we have a command called load, which isn't for loading your dishwasher, which I wish it would. I would use that all the time. Actually, that for me, that command for me is Ian. That's my son's name. He's in charge of doing the dishes. Like, Ian, load the dishwasher. In the database, I have a load command. I can say, hey, load this data, and it automatically creates the table and puts the data in there for me. So that's me typing and calling the command. On the MCP side, we're going to create a tool called data loading, which will allow me to talk to the agent like I'm talking to my son. Hey, Ian, go load the dishwasher. I can say, hey, go load the table with this data. It'll see that tool, and it'll invoke it and run it. So the similarities are more like on the back-end side for us. Okay, Abhishek, can we use Oracle Apex in offline mode? So I think Apex can do various things in an offline mode. Apex is our low-code web platform for Oracle database apps. The answer to that is yes, kind of. I don't think it's 100% yes, Abhishek. But yes, there's limited things you can make available offline. So when you're on the airplane and you have to go into Wi-Fi off, there's certain things that'll work. Sujan asks, or Suhan, sorry, I pronounced that wrong again. Can we develop an app which runs offline? The data should be stored in offline mode too, and the page should load. Yeah, I mean, that's an application stack question, right? So here's the fun thing. When I asked it to make that Spotify app for me, it started off in online and offline. So really, it wasn't like a real-time app that was showing me literally everything. It was summarizing. Like it's summarized by genre and year, and I had those charts, and they had like the last 50 plays or something like that. It built the app with that data hard-coded into the app. So literally it was offline. Then as a follow-up, I said, this is a great start. Here's what we're going to do next. Go get the node driver for Oracle. I'm going to help you define the connection to the database. We're going to create REST APIs on the back end that run queries on the database. So this is online data. Now, I could have then said when that was working, okay, we're going to evolve it one more time. You are going to cache the data so that if we lose our network connection, the app will still work. But again, that's a node question, and that's an application architecture decision. It's not really the MCP server's role. In that case, the MCP server's role is just help you get stuff in and out of the database.
Sid, your next one, you can raise your hand. You can unmute yourself if you want to ask questions, speak to ask questions. Go ahead.
Hi, yes. I think I'd asked in the chat as well. I asked how does the MCP server handle data access governance and what kind of security it's using. So
I see it said, thanks.
Yeah.
So that's the nice thing about this. The MCP server doesn't have to handle this at all because the backend set up to handle it by default. So the database has rules for the very rows you're allowed to see. Like, so for example, I'm allowed to see my salary data in the employees table, but I can't see Sid's and Tara's. That can be defined on the back end in the database. The MCP server, when it goes to make a connection, it's using database credentials like a username and a password. That credential set that it's using, it's coded into these rules in the database. So it can see these tables, but not these. It can see parts of these tables, but not those. This data is redacted. This data is encrypted. You don't even get into this database. That sort of stuff. It's all just seamless. So I didn't really show much of the setup side because that's the boring part. I wanted just to show the fancy on the end. On the setup side, you need access to your database. So a DBA or an administrator is going to do that. And when they do that, they're going to give you credentials, and those credentials are going to be tied to these security rules, and you're just going to be able to see what you can see. But whatever you can do, that LLM via the MCP can theoretically do it. That's why I said it's important to use credentials that are properly locked down.
thank you.
Yep. I get in trouble if I don't talk about security in all of these sessions because all of the most important things in the world are in these types of databases. So if you let LLMs into those systems, that's bad news. Like, so we have customers that will set up reporting instances that aren't like live production real-time data. They're like replicated overnight or every 12 hours. That's a reporting system, so it's a safer environment. Or we'll have development environments that are copies of that, but the personal identifiable information or the sensitive information has been redacted or been changed into ipsum lorem nonsense. Or you have development environments where it's literally just wherever you want to put into it, and there's nothing in there that you have to worry about, and you can let it go full God mode in there. If you're in like one person only playtime mode, you don't have to worry about this so much. But if you're in a corporate environment, there are people on your IT and security teams that are paid, their full-time jobs are to help set these things up. And so if they get scared when you talk about, hey, I saw this thing Jeff talked about, it would be awesome, can we use it? Just tell them, hey, it obeys all of the security rules in the database, go read the docs. And if they want help, they give them my email address and they can ping me.
Great. We still have a few more minutes. If anybody have last minute questions, feel free to send in the chat or just raise your hand. You can unmute yourself to speak our questions. And I also put the survey on the screens. Please to fill in the survey, helping us to shape the future events, give us feedbacks. And also for the next sessions is next Tuesday, the same time. You can sign up for the next sessions too. The link, the survey link, and the next event link is also on the in the chat.